Hey YouTube, how goes it? So you may remember about 2 weeks ago we did an unboxing of the Dell XPS 13 and I promised you guys I would give you a full review. Well, after playing around with it, I believe the time has finally come to do just that. Before we get started, just a reminder, if you liked what you see, consider subscribing to my channel. Let's go. So just a little bit of the XPS series in general. This particular configuration is known as the XPS 13 or the XPS 9300. It was released in January 2020 of this current year. Also, it's worth noting that the Dell XPS is part of Dell's high-end premium laptop lineup. It's also accompanied by the XPS 15 and the XPS 17, which are the larger variants. Let's talk design language. Now, Dell has opted to use a polished aluminum-like look at the very top of the laptop. Also, as you get towards the side of the laptops where the I/O ports are and the back hinges, you'll find that Dell's actually used polished steel, which gives it a very premium look and a nice weight to it as well. As you get to the bottom of the laptop, you'll find that they used hard plastic that has an aluminum-like appearance, and honestly, it's not necessarily a bad choice considering this is at the bottom of the laptop. All in all, the Dell has opted to use multiple types of materials in a single build. This laptop only weighs 2.8 pounds, which is super lightweight, especially when you compare it to the likes of the MacBook Pro 13-inch or the Surface Book 3 by Microsoft. Its super small form factor makes it really easy to carry around. You would not even feel it in your backpack, even if you had it all day long. Furthermore, at its thickest point, this laptop is only 9.58 millimeters thick. That is seriously thin for a laptop. In fact, I'd argue it's one of the thinnest laptops you can get right now in the Ultrabook market. Moving on to the inner design. The entire body of the Dell XPS, from the trackpad to the keyboard, is circled with a carbon fiber-like layer. This looks very nice and feels premium. It's also worth noting that the hinges are very nicely hidden by Dell. In fact, they look so subtle because of the way the screen goes all the way down. You wouldn't be able to see the hinges unless you peek towards them. It is worth noting, however, the sharp protruding edges of the XPS 13 can make it a little uncomfortable for the wrist as well as your palm, especially if you're using it for prolonged periods of time. Now, as far as I/O ports go, Dell gives you a pretty limited option, but that's pretty common with Ultrabooks nowadays. You get two USB-C ports, one on either side. You get a dedicated micro SD card reader, and you also have your traditional headphone jack. It's worth noting that charging is done via a USB-C port, and also Dell actually provides you a USB-C to USB-A dongle that's included right in the box, and that's good to see. Let's get into the juicy details: performance. Now, the XPS series offers Intel's newest 10th generation Ice Lake processors alongside a bunch of other new specs. This particular configuration has Intel's quad-core Core i5-1035G1 processor, which is clocked at 1 GHz. Furthermore, you get 8 GB of RAM and you get a 256 GB SSD. Also, you get Intel's integrated UHD graphics built right in. It's worth noting, for most day-to-day tasks like word processing, media viewing, and web browsing, this laptop should have more than ample power. I could sit here and talk about benchmarks all day long, but that would be boring, and you can probably find plenty of videos like that on YouTube already. Instead, I'm going to talk about meaningful real-world tests that we performed to see how the performance does on the XPS 13. It's worth noting, all the tests we did were done while the laptop was plugged in and we had ultra performance mode enabled to see how far the laptop can be pushed. Now, the Dell XPS does pretty well when attempting to play 4K content on YouTube or Netflix, for example. We found that there was no lag or buffer. It is worth noticing that the fans do start picking up a little bit if you play 4K content for more than a couple of minutes, but at no point did you notice any sort of major lag, like I mentioned. However, where things do get interesting is when you start using editing programs like Adobe Rush, for example. When we tried to edit videos and render them, as long as they were 1080p or Full HD, we didn't have any issues at all. We were able to smoothly render the image without any problems. But as soon as you take it up to 4K, it starts struggling hard. We noticed immediately the fans start going crazy, the laptop starts heating up fairly fast, and within a couple of minutes, the program starts to lag. In fact, it becomes very difficult to render or edit any footage in 4K, especially if you're going to be adding more than one layer of video. And this is definitely not a device that's designed to be doing video rendering, especially at those kinds of resolution, for sure. Now, the next thing we tested is gaming. The XPS 13 is obviously not designed for any sort of hardcore gaming whatsoever, but we wanted to see if it could handle casual gaming on low settings. So to test this, I ran a game called Cities Skyline, which is a city simulation game. It's pretty CPU intensive, so what we did is we kept the settings low but ran the game at native resolution. for about the first 10 minutes or so, the game ran pretty smoothly and I was actually shocked at how well it runs. However, as soon as we crossed the 10-minute mark, the fans started going off, as well as the fact that the laptop got uncomfortably hot. And shortly after, we started noticing lag and freezing going on in the game, to the point where it just became unbearable to play the game. Once again, it seems the issue over here was thermal throttling. It's not that the laptop is underpowered or it can't handle it from a specification point of view, it's just that because of how slim the device is, it heats up very fast, and as a result of this, you compromise on performance significantly. The one good news from all this is the XPS 13 has a pretty quiet fan. In fact, especially when compared to the likes of the MacBook Pro's 13's jet engines that they have installed on there, it's very quiet. Under low system loads, it's practically not there, you just can't hear it. It feels like you're holding a tablet. Now, I would say that the XPS 13 is not geared, nor is it particularly capable of playing most video games. It's also not designed for CPU intensive tasks like video rendering. That's not to say you can't do those, it's just that if you plan to do this for prolonged periods of time, you will suffer in performance because of thermal throttling. All in all, I would say the XPS 13 is designed for day-to-day tasks with a little bit of push and kick intended. The XPS series also comes loaded with the newest Wi-Fi standard, also known as Wi-Fi 6, and Bluetooth 5.1. I was pretty surprised at how powerful the Wi-Fi is on this machine, to be honest. Being several rooms away from the router, we're still getting peak signal strength and high speeds. That's pretty good, especially if you live in a house. One of my favorite things about the XPS 13 is its trackpad. It's a very large trackpad, which means you have plenty of room for scrolling and performing gestures. Also, the clicks are solid and precise. It's also worth noting, similar to MacBook and Surface Book 3, the Dell XPS offers a glass top trackpad, which really adds a nice premium feel to the design. The XPS series has pretty decent keyboards. They have good pushback as well as deep travels. With that being said, when compared to the likes of the Surface Book 3's amazing tactile keyboard, they do fall behind because of the mushy feel that you get when you're typing, especially when you're typing really fast. The keyboard is fully backlit, it comes with a 2-tier brightness adjustment setting. Also, the function keys double as media, volume, as well as playback support buttons. The power button is located right next to the delete button on the laptop. They got this idea from the MacBook Pro to double it as a fingerprint scanner as well, but honestly, that's a good thing because that means you now have more authentication methods on a Windows device. Let's talk display. Now, as far as displays on Ultrabooks go, the XPS series has one of the best displays you can find on a laptop, but not for the reasons you might think. The XPS 13 comes with a native resolution display of 1920 by 1200. That's just marginally better than a full HD display. This translates to roughly 169 pixels per inch. This falls well behind the MacBook 3 or the Surface Book 3 with their higher resolutions in PPI. Despite this, there's something very soothing about the XPS 13 screen, and I think that has to do with its nice infinity edge display, ultra-thin bezels, 16:10 aspect ratio, and its amazing 500 nits peak brightness setting. Also, it's worth noting that you get full DCI P3 gamut color support on the XPS 13 screen, which basically translates to really good color accuracy. Now, for those of you who have extra cash to spare, you can opt to get the 4K version of this display on the XPS 13, which would put it ahead of most Ultrabooks in terms of raw resolution. Also, it's worth noting that combining this with the Infinity Edge display and the color support I mentioned earlier, this would probably be one of, if not the best display you can buy on an Ultrabook in its class. But with that being said, while it's nice to have the 4K display, it's by no means required to have an optimal display experience. The native default display is more than sufficient to provide a good viewing experience. Now, the XPS 13 comes loaded with WaveMax digital stereo sound speakers, which actually sound pretty good to be honest, but they still fall well behind the likes of the MacBook Pro's amazing stereo speakers. But you know what? To make it more fair, here's a sound test between some of the top in-class laptops, and you can be the judge. Now Dell, like most other laptop companies, has opted to shoot themselves in the foot with a mediocre 720p webcam included in the laptop. Honestly, it's shameful how companies are still doing this, and compared to the likes of the Surface Book 3, which offer a premium 1080p 8 megapixel and 5 megapixel dual camera on either side of the laptop, it's just astounding how companies haven't picked up on this, but definitely not a great webcam experience. Battery life on the XPS 13 is pretty impressive. We actually got a nice 10.5 hour battery life out of a full charge. It's worth keeping in mind this is the base configuration, and we did a combination of tasks like web browsing, streaming, as well as photo editing to see how the laptop would hold under moderate CPU intensive tasks. It's also worth noting that because this is the base configuration, it will vary in terms of its battery life and compared to the top end configuration, which has a quad-core Core i7 processor and of course more RAM. All in all though, we have to say the battery life on the XPS is probably the best in class, and it overtakes other major ultrabooks in the market for sure. In terms of pricing, the XPS 13 is pretty competitively priced in line with most other ultrabooks. This base configuration starts at $1,650 and has the specs I mentioned earlier. You can max out the Dell XPS 13 at $2,650. You get the quad-core Core i7 processor, you get 16 gigabytes of RAM, you also get 2 terabytes of SSD storage, and of course you get Intel's newest Iris Plus graphics, which are an improvement over the Intel UHD graphics. Overall, this is pretty good. It is worth noting though, the RAM upgrade option on the XPS is pretty limited. You can only max up to 16 gigabytes of RAM on the XPS 13, and unfortunately this cannot be upgraded on the XPS 13 model. However, you can upgrade the RAM on the XPS 15 and XPS 17 models. Now I think based on everything we've gone through, it's safe to say we can draw a definitive conclusion about the XPS 13. Some of its outstanding features include its ultra lightweight and portable body, which makes it great for carrying all day long. It also has an amazing trackpad that's plenty wide, has lots of scrolling space and good precision. Also has the best in-class display I've seen with its Infinity Edge ultra thin bezel display. It also has great battery life, and it has support for a fingerprint scanner built right in, which is great from an authentication point of view. On the flip side, the XPS 13's thermal throttling issues continues to handicap its performance severely. Also, because of the lack of a proper cooling system, the XPS 13 gets pretty hot under high task load to the point where it's borderline uncomfortable. Furthermore, having a limited RAM upgrade option which maxes out at 16 gigabytes is not up to 2020 standards in my opinion, and this further handicaps performance. Lastly, the inclusion of a subpar 720p webcam is definitely something Dell should work on. All in all, I would recommend this Ultrabook to anyone who wants a premium, well-built, lightweight machine that will do day-to-day tasks without any issues whatsoever. However, for anyone looking for a gaming machine or any sort of video rendering or photo editing or other CPU-intensive tasks, this is not the right machine because of its poor thermal management issues. Overall, I think the XPS 13 is a solid machine, and it's one that justifies its price point with some major and obvious shortcomings. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please do consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. Until next time, Soul of Tech logging out.